everyone, and welcome back to the Dignity Project Community Hub. I am joined today by Janine Shepherd AM, and we are recording this episode as part of Disability Action Week, so that's really exciting. Janine is an Australian author of 6 books, an aerobatics pilot, and she is here today to talk to us about dignity. And Janine, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself for those who don't know you?
Sure. Well, I was an athlete. I was a cross-country skier training for the Olympics, and I was involved in a serious accident, had multiple injuries, ended up in a spinal ward where I spent 6 months and got out in a wheelchair. And I guess you could say that was the moment that changed my life forever. From an athlete, I was at the time at university studying sports science. I wanted to be an exercise physiologist. And I came home in a wheelchair and had to really rethink my life. I was told that I'll never be able to do the things I did before. And, I guess you could say I hit rock bottom. And it was sort of, I guess that's when the remarkable part of my story came, because when I was at home in a wheelchair, an aeroplane flew over, and I remember looking up and thinking, well, if I can't walk, then maybe I can fly. And fast forward, I was lifted up into an aeroplane and went on to become a private pilot, a commercial pilot, an aerobatics flying instructor, and had children and wrote books. And so that's the elevator pitch of my story.
Yes. No, that's great. So obviously, as part of the books that you have written, you talk about your, signature mindset, which is the hills. So I'm curious about how you see that relating to dignity and what that might mean for you.
Yeah. Well, I do talk about the hills, and I think I use that because it was a mindset that I created, or that I discovered as a young child when I started my athletic career at the age of 6 or 7. I realised that when we went training, everyone would train on the flats. And so I sort of said, well, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to take the hard option. I'm going to train on the hills. And I say that really developed this sort of love of hills, and it earned me a nickname from my teammates of Janine the Machine. And so I trained hard, and I had this, sort of mindset of just, no fear, turn towards the hills, take on the hills. And it really gave me not just a physical strength, but a sort of mental toughness. And that was something that I had to fall back on when I was home in my wheelchair after my accident, because I'd really hit rock bottom. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with my life? I can't go back to uni. I can't be around my friends. It was too painful. And so I really got to the point where I had to say, okay, well, what do you know? What can you rely on? It's that mindset that you had, which is love the hills. So yes, this was, the biggest hill I'd ever faced, but it was nevertheless a hill. So that's when really everything changed for me. And I decided that, okay, I'm going to, find out what this is all about and try to, create some meaning around my accident and my injuries.
Great. Yeah, I love that. I relate to that as a former runner myself. The hills are hard, but that's where you're made. So I think that's a great mindset. What does dignity mean to you?
Well, I think that it's probably a very personal meaning. But I think for me, it's an intrinsic value that I have, regardless of what I look like or what I do for a living, or I think it's intrinsic to all of us, just the mere fact that we're human beings. And, that became a real challenge for me, because I'd always been someone as an athlete who presented myself to the world in a physical sense. I knew that I looked very strong, and that I felt was my power. And when I got home from hospital, in a wheelchair, I'd lost so much weight, I couldn't walk, I had to learn to use a catheter. I think my sense of who I was, my sense of self, became damaged. And so my whole identity also around disability. I mean, there was a lot of stigma around that at the time. Thinking back about being in the spinal ward, I remember there was one occasion where they pushed me outside in my wheelchair, and I was sitting outside the spinal ward, and people would come in to visit, and nobody walked up to me or actually acknowledged or talked to me. It was my first, experience of there's something wrong with me. There was a lot of stigma back then. I mean, that was back in 86 around disability, and it was a very painful experience for me. Again, another experience I had in the spinal ward, they used to take us out on excursions, and they put us in a bus. They wheeled all the wheelchairs onto the bus, and they took us to a local beach. And I remember we pulled up next to a car full of young guys that were surfing, and on the side of the bus it said Prince Henry Spinal Unit. And I remember them looking and sort of staring and laughing as we wheeled out of the bus. And these were experiences that actually had this sort of indelible mark on me. And I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to be disabled, whatever that meant, because there was that stigma around it. And I think we've talked before about this, that I think that that's changing now, and I've sort of grown into that now.
Can you take me through that? Because I think that transition probably relates to a lot of people who are in the community hub, especially those with an acquired impairment, and how you've gone from that place of feeling like I don't relate, I don't want to be seen as disabled, to now really embracing it and being a strong advocate for disability rights. What has that journey been like, and how has dignity maybe played into that for you?
Yeah. I think in a way I felt like I've sort of grown into it. I was in this very in-between world because I did learn to walk again, even though I walk with a significant limp. So I wasn't in a wheelchair anymore. Yes, I had to use a catheter, but that's the sort of thing that you can hide in your handbag. And so for all intents and purposes, I didn't look different, and I wanted to look like everyone else. I sort of wanted to fit in. And I realised, especially having children too, that I was it was a disservice. I was really bowing to ableism if I was not going to stand up and say, look, there's, the world needs to recognise that we have different needs. And, I'm actually, really proud now to walk outside. I've now got a walking stick, which is the best $80 that I've ever spent. And I needed that because some years ago I was experiencing, really serious chronic pain. And I realised that why have I waited so long to do this? Why have I been sort of pushing my body through this, intense pain when I could just get a walking stick and it would be so much easier? And I've noticed that people do even treat me differently when I have my walking stick. But I've realised that, we need to be visible. These things people need to be aware of these things, because the world is not designed around disability. And I have 3 children, and my eldest daughter actually studied psychology, and I took her to a conference some years ago. It was a big conference at Luna Park. And, I had my walking stick and I had her with me. And the conference was up 2 very steep staircases. And she was furious. She said, I cannot believe they've organised this big conference and they haven't organised it somewhere that's accessible for people with disabilities. And I sort of covered it up and went, no, it's all right. I'll push myself up these staircases and I won't say anything. And she really gave me a hard time about that. And I realised, what am I doing? Yes, I need to tell these people that I can't get up these stairs and this isn't good enough. And until we're really, able to do that, then nothing will change.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I think it's so interesting that it's your children as well who are pushing you to be that advocate and have that voice. That's something I'm really conscious of, having young kids, how we expose them to diversity and, diverse impairment and diverse needs, and make that just a really natural thing for them moving forward, rather than this thing that we have to overcome or work in. It's just a natural part of their upbringing. So I think, yeah, that speaks to, I think, what a lot of our members are probably going through as well. We have quite a few parents in the community hub. So thank you for sharing that.
No, it's so important. And, my children are all, they're my greatest teachers. And I mentioned to you, just recently that I was challenged. Everything that happens in life is an opportunity to grow. And my eldest daughter, Annabelle, the one that studied psychology, told me a few days ago that she actually changed her pronouns. And it was, I really didn't understand it, but it was a great opportunity for me to embrace that and to say, well, okay, I'm going to honour who you are and any diversity that might exist. Or, it's just so important. And it gave me cause to really think about my disability and how, if she's got the courage to do that, then I've got the courage to own and step into being a person with disability.
Yeah, that's great. And I think language is so important, and having that space and an opportunity to identify in the way that you want to. That's what dignity is all about, isn't it? And being able to live your own life on the terms that you choose. So I think that's really important and amazing.
Yeah, especially as a parent. When she approached me about this and we started talking about gender and sexuality and all of these things that were sort of, to me, sort of new. And I just said to her, look, I love and accept you. Whatever you want, whatever pronouns you use or whatever identity or, and I said to her, I want you to teach me about this because I want to understand it. She's working in a very progressive organisation now. She's worked at the neuroscience lab at UNSW. She's written kids' books. She's worked at Google. She's now working at Canva. And she said to me, Mum, it's the most incredible workplace. She said, when I told everyone that I was doing this, it was like a badge of honor. Everyone cheered. And it's, for me, I think there's so many young people that are, they're just very open-minded. And I want to be that person too. I want to be inclusive and I want to embrace diversity. And I think we have that responsibility to do that.
And how are you using your platform? Because obviously, you're a recognized author and have done a TED Talk. And so how do you use your platform to advocate for that?
Well, I think I try to bring awareness to, obviously, a cause that's close to my heart, which is spinal cord injury. I'm ambassador for Spinal Cure Australia. So I try to help people understand that spinal cord injury isn't just about walking, that there are so many other aspects of spinal cord injury that people don't understand. There's loss of feeling, loss of sexual function, bladder and bowel, chronic pain, depression. There's so many underlying, debilitating effects of a spinal cord injury. So keeping that awareness about my condition and who I am, on all of the platforms, whether it's, blogging or writing an article on LinkedIn or Twitter or doing what I can to as an ambassador for Spinal Cure Australia. So, and also, as you know, I'm now about to undertake a PhD in resilience and disability, and I'm really excited to be able to create something that's really going to be a world first, because when I know as a spinal cord patient that when I had my accident, it was all about the physical body. It was all about, let's talk about what's wrong with you. And, it's a different world now. And, I'm very heavily into positive psychology, coaching and learning and understanding how to help people embrace their strengths and really flip it on its head and say, well, there's more right with you than wrong with you. So my PhD will be really about developing a positive psychology intervention to boost resilience in people with spinal cord injury.
Great. Well, I can't wait to follow along with your journey as a PhD candidate myself. I'm very excited to have you in our HDR cohort. You're just elevating the cohort just slightly.
I'm so excited. And, I have to say it's been incredibly inspiring for me because, this hasn't been done and it's an area that needs to be done. And to jump back into the spinal ward again, it's taken me this long. As a spinal patient, it's usually very challenging to go back to a spinal ward because it's so traumatic. And there's a lot of trauma wrapped up in that whole experience. So I feel like, it's taken all of these years to be able to heal and to bring and offer something that I've learnt to help other people.
Yeah.
So I'm excited at the opportunity.
It's amazing. I'm so excited for you. And I just want to unpack a little bit about that because it's the interventions specifically related to resilience. And a lot of the work that we do, resilience, empathy, dignity, it all sort of has that overlap, right? As maybe a bit fluffy or intangible, something you can't measure. Talk me through that resilience piece and how you find that actually has an impact and what that might do for dignity for people with spinal cord injury and just more broadly as well.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about resilience is we know that it's a skill, that can be learnt and cultivated throughout our lives. It's not so much something we're born with, it's something we continually work at. Positive psychology is the science of well-being, what makes life worth living. And, of course, the father of positive psychology is Martin Seligman at Penn State. And so I know we can talk about, perhaps if people don't understand positive psychology, that it is fluffy. But I guess what it is, it's opposed to the, the paradigm of what's wrong with you in traditional psychology, pathology. It's more about, the things that make life worth living, like gratitude and forgiveness and optimism. And these actually can be measured. And I'll give you an example. Gratitude, which is probably the most research aspect of positive psychology. Dr. Robert Emmons has done a lot of research into this, and we know that it actually does change our brains. And when I was in the spinal ward, there was the word neuroplasticity didn't even exist. And I realised that, even though I've retrained my body and learned to walk again through neuroplasticity, I've also learned to live my life and create resilience through that same process of neuroplasticity. Gratitude wasn't even understood or even researched when I was in hospital. And I remember that I spent almost 6 months in the spinal ward. And I remember I made a decision very early on that I was going to thank people that came in to visit me and be grateful to them, not knowing that what it was actually doing was changing my brain and giving me a toolkit that is probably my go-to resilience tool right now. And we know that there's a lot of power behind the power of gratitude. Yeah. So gratitude, forgiveness, again, the power of forgiveness. I had to forgive the man that ran me over and was charged with negligent driving and got an $80 fine. And I got to the point where I realised that until I was ready to forgive him, then I wasn't, I wasn't letting him off the hook. I was letting myself off the hook.
Yeah.
So there's research around that too, about optimism, probably one of the most powerful tools in positive psychology. And one of my favourites, hope. But, I've done a lot of reading of C.R. Snyder from the University of Kansas, who talks, and Brene Brown actually talks, probably a lot of people out there would know Brene Brown's work, she talks a lot about hope not being, a fluffy feel-good thing. It's actually a cognitive skill based on goals, pathways, and agency. So these are all tangible things. They're actually skills that we can learn and cultivate.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that just gives everyone some background into the exciting things that you have coming up and how, to put the different hat on about these sorts of values-based terms and the importance they actually have for people's, long-term physical and mental well-being. I think it's really important to recognize the value of those terms.
And they're fun things, aren't they? I mean, practicing gratitude is a fun exercise.
Yeah.
And we know that they help, with our well-being. So, I enjoy it.
Yes, it's great. We always say that in our house. Attitude of gratitude. Come on, kids. Like, what are we thankful for? And, trying to drill that in. But it does. It just, the more you look for the good things, the more good things you see. And I think a parenting person I follow on Instagram, she says, when you water the flowers and not the weeds. And I do think that can be challenging when you're facing adversity. So it's important to reframe it as, a skill that does help your long-term health.
And again, you just, hit the nail on the head there. It's, Barbara Fredrickson has done a lot of research around positive emotions, the broaden and build theory. And so when you are, looking for the positives, you're more creative, you're more open-minded, you're more open to possibilities. And, so it's important to keep working on these things.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any closing advice that you would like to share with our members in the Community Hub about dignity or resilience or any of the things that we talked about today?
Well, I think for anyone out there that perhaps has had an accident or a disability, I would say I hope that you could steer them to my TED Talk, the title, which is A Broken Body Isn't a Broken Person. That's the TED people changed the title. The original title was You're Not Your Body. And I think that's really important to understand that it doesn't matter what disability you might have, whether it's physical, whether it's, visible or not. You have value, you have worth, you are loved. And I think that's really important to remind ourselves of that. And I think it's, for me, I know that the thing that really shifted everything for me was when I got home, when I thought, all of the life that I'd worked for was gone. When I decided to learn to fly, that changed everything for me. It gave me a reason to get out of bed in the morning. So for anyone out there that perhaps is in a situation where they're not able to do the things that they did before, there is always a possibility of a very different life, but not a lesser life. It can be an extraordinary life. And I think it's important to have a goal, which is a reason to get out of bed. And it's important to connect to our values, what's important to us, what sort of a person do I want to be in the world, how do I want to present myself, and, surround yourself with great people that support you.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Janine, for joining us today and making the time difference work from over in now Park City, Utah. We really appreciate your time. And I know that everyone from the Community Hub will be really interested in your story. Where can people find you on Twitter or LinkedIn? Do you want to just share your handles and we'll put them in the comments?
Twitter, I think, is just at Janine Shepherd, LinkedIn, Janine Shepherd, Instagram, Janine_Shepherd, and Facebook, Janine Shepherd, motivational speaker, author. I think that's everything.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, thank you again. And looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you. And have a great day.